What's up, and welcome to Add, Edit, Delete. This is a podcast for business owners by business owners. My name is Mike Ford. I'm joined by my partners, Cody and Mark. And what we're going to be doing is discussing things that we've been through our careers as entrepreneurs. We've had a lot of success in generating hundreds of millions of dollars through our businesses, but it hasn't come easy. And so there's a lot of things that we felt like we wanted to bring forward to the small business community. And that's why we're here. My background, real quick, is I started washing dishes at 13 years old. And it was all about trying to get something that I never grew up with. Blue collar background. And I felt like business, as an air quote term, was a way I was going to be able to find some money to be able to buy some things that I had never seen other than on TV. And that began a gradual journey of taking business classes in high school. I was able to get into a good school, majored in marketing, and just started to immerse myself into businesses around leaders that I could learn from. And I did that. Got an MBA, had a lot of corporate experience where I learned from a lot of really good leaders with some businesses that were in various stages of their life cycle, some very developed, some emerging, some that just needed optimization. And I took all of that experience and brought that out to help other businesses through my own really grow and scale. And how do you do that right? And so we've had a lot of success in our journeys together, and we're looking forward to having a conversation about it. So I'll introduce you to my partners. Start with Cody. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
My long journey.
How long does it take to get to be 6'5"?
A lot of vegetables. So yeah, I was an entrepreneur at a young age, and I didn't know what that was. My parents were both blue collar, farming, right? Very entrepreneurial. You learn a lot about wins and losses in farming and raising animals and crop and so on. But where I really got my start in entrepreneuring was mowing lawns. I had a lawn mowing business. My parents bought my brother and I a lawn mowing business. My brother was 9 and I was 11. And full-time job. The only time that we would get time away or time off was if we were playing sports. So didn't have a lot of money growing up, didn't hardly have any money. And my parents instilled this hard work ethic in us at a very young age. And, you're 9, 10 years old. You don't know how to mow a lawn. So you find out pretty quick because people don't care. They'll come out there and rip a little 11-year-old boy for, the line's not being straight in the grass.
Oh, wow.
And so I learned at like a really young age how to deal with people, and how to continue to grow a business. And so that was really great that my parents got me into that. And they did that so we could earn money for college and we'd put money away. And it was a cool deal that they had for us because if I wasn't working, then I needed to somehow pay for my school. So if I'm not working, I need to play sports and I need to have good grades. So I had 3 options. It was work, study, or go lift weights, which was, lift weights is playing sports. So that hard work ethic blossomed into what I have now. And underneath me, I have 13 LLCs. So, and then I've grown some businesses from ground up. And then we've also went into businesses and spun them up and taken them from $20 million a year to $100 million a year businesses. And yeah, I'm running out of breath because didn't pace myself first podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like long story short, hard work ethic from a young age, and it's always worked for me, and discipline and showing up on time. And I learned that from being a young entrepreneur and growing into these bigger businesses. What about you, Mark? Tell us about your story.
Here's my story. Yeah, I had a job early, young as well. I was selling, not delivering newspapers, selling subscriptions door to door. 13 years old. I did that for a while. And like you said, you're door knocking. And at that young of an age, you're going to learn a lot about just individuals and dealing with people and just growing and going through that ladder, climbing up that ladder, basically.
Prejudging whose door you're knocking on, right? Like, do I want to knock on this one?
Definitely. So, doing that and then just, applying myself and that hard work ethic, that's what matters, I think, 100%. Because if you don't have a hard work ethic, that everything else it's not gonna work out for you.
Yeah. Well, how did you develop into that work ethic? You're honestly, knocking on people's doors, you're delivering papers.
Yeah, I think I wanted to make a little bit of money,
Yeah.
I didn't come from a lot, I had a single mom and 3 sisters, a brother. And that's something that, it's good making your little $100 a week there.
Yeah. Were you the oldest, youngest?
I was second to youngest. I had 3 older sisters, a younger brother. But yeah, it just teaches you a lot, and going through my parents, my mom working, hard worker.
Yeah, single mom.
Single mom.
5 of you?
5 of us, yeah.
Yeah, so money's tight.
Right,
like you had to find some money some way, like especially if you wanted stuff or wanted a new shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the things. Yeah, I wasn't growing up with Jordans or anything. No Jordans, given. Definitely. But like I said, all of those experiences put me where I'm at now. And it gave me that foundation of where I want to go, what I want to do. And that's what's important to you. Like, what's important to you? I don't know. What's important to me?
What is important to you?
Family, number one. I think family. That's, other than that, you can get into a little, but I put family first above everything else. You can build a great business, you can do all these things, but if you don't have a family to go home to, if you don't have, I have a 4-month-old daughter that it just is everything.
You and I were just talking with Travis, right? With Sticky Paws, right?
Yeah.
And they're going through that grind right now.
Yeah.
They're sleeping on the couch, right?
Yeah.
You remember doing that at a young age,
yeah.
pushing that grind and asking them, I was asking him, what's your goal? He didn't have like a set goal, but he knew that like working hard now. And I remember being in his shoes and knowing like I had a goal. I didn't want to work this hard. I'd seen my parents work their whole life. But it was cool to like see where he was at and then like think back on that. Like I've been in his shoes multiple times, right? On starting a new business venture and growing something and, is it going to work out? The time put it into it. And like, I remember like bragging about how hard I was working, but like, cause I thought like that was what was supposed to be done. That's, how I learned through, previous coaches and bosses. But the end goal is for me, just like you, is like time with family, like so important. And that's what this podcast is about. Like, how do you go from sleeping on the couch, working long hours, not seeing your family, not having time for friends, to developing or, finding
that time, making that time.
That's a good concept, right? Is like work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're in corporate America. It was a really good buzzword, right? But the way you differentiated yourself in corporate America was give up what HR was telling you to have a work-life balance and go harder than the person that was taking their family as a priority.
You were like at your peak when you were doing the work-life balance where you're traveling around. What was your time like? You were in the plane more and in different
Well, I
places?
traveled. I've always traveled a lot for my job. And you develop rationalization and justification skills, right? Where it's like, I'm going for my family.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And those can get cloudy, right? Sometimes it feels like too long. I live back in Boston. We're sitting in Vegas now where we have a lot of businesses based and, that requires time away from me.
Absolutely.
But the thing that I enjoy about where I am now I have a 3-year-old daughter, 10-year-old son, 13-year-old son, is telling them I'm going out to film a podcast.
Yeah.
Right. And these kids, I didn't know there was no podcast when I was 13.
Yeah.
My dad, who was a school teacher, definitely wasn't building businesses, and definitely was like the things that you can expose your family to based on what we have going on for businesses. I find a lot of value in that, not the paycheck, right? The things that have happened when you're trying to understand what is the right work-life balance. Creating stability for that family financially,
Yes.
a lot is what is the best thing you can do for them. And sometimes that doesn't mean you're going to be there for every pickup or every sporting event, right? Because you're hoping if the kid needs a new stick or a new ball or a new pair of cleats, there's funds for that. The way I grew up, there weren't always funds for that, right? So that's the internal game, right? What value am I giving to my family by taking my time away from them? I have a core belief where I believe the most valuable thing you can give anybody is your time. And so when my businesses are taking time away from my family, hopefully that investment in what I'm building in financial stability is worth that trade-off.
Yeah, and that's something that you and I have riffed about a lot, right? How do you create that time, and then realizing that action versus activity, which and are you just being active? Are you getting stuff done, or are you actually taking action and finishing it and creating that time? Which really, that's something that Mike and I have dealt with a lot of employees, other businesses. Are they just spinning their wheels, or is that thing in drive and is it going, or are you sitting in neutral? Which really ties into this podcast, which is add, edit, delete.
Yeah.
And how do we, just from sitting here, family is important. So how do you add, edit, and delete your business to get more time with your family or to achieve those long-term goals?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, starting with the lowest hanging fruit, stuff that's not adding value, right? Get that out, right? If you're when you develop a career, your skills become more enhanced. And so things like reconciling my QuickBooks, right? I don't do anymore. Where is the value that I'm best utilized in providing the business? A lot of times it's in giving up. This is editing. Who is going to be doing these tasks?
And delegate. Yep.
Delegate is the hardest skill to develop.
Some people can't let go.
Some people cannot let go, right? And but it's mandatory.
Yeah.
It's mandatory to
you
scale.
You have to.
I call it don't steal the learning, right? So when someone is taking on a new task, it's very easy to get in and really do it side by side. How many times are you going to do it side by side where you're actually doubling the amount of work because it's redundant?
Yeah.
You got to let them go, got to let them fail or succeed. But if you don't let go, you don't know if they're going to fail or succeed, right? So.
Yeah. So that just like brings something up that reminds me of when we were doing the EOS model and we were learning, like really what in the EOS model for learning that we took as entrepreneurs and executives, we were learning how to grow the business because we had grown to an substantial amount in a short amount of time. And it seemed like we would have this huge, it reminded me of a Christmas tree, right? It would grow, and then that base needed to grow a lot bigger because it was growing so tall so fast. And so a lot of times Mike and I were building the building blocks to keep that sturdy. And in that EOS model, it was simplify, delegate, elevate, predict, and systematize. And what that, and I think you can add that down and simplify it to add, edit, delete.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what it is.
Yep.
And so, which we've developed we have our own EOS model.
That would make a long podcast name.
It would make a long podcast name. Correct. Yeah. So exciting stuff. Like just sitting here and talking about that and understanding what our own concept, our own core concepts, our own plan of action that we have put together and how to help people understand that. Because, it is a mouthful to to think
Yeah.
of all those, and they're key and then they're important. And so how do you step back from that?
Well, I think of something, Mark, when you're talking about, your experience growing up is with your mom taking care of everything.
Oh yeah.
And your dad was out building business, right? He's a
Oh,
serial
well,
entrepreneur, still
yeah,
working.
Yeah, he's
So he chose that drive, but didn't
100%.
figure it out.
That's
Didn't figure out
why-
that work-life balance,
Yeah.
and you've internalized that.
100%. I think that's why it's so. Yeah, my dad was never at a baseball game, just never. I didn't see my dad for a long time. So yeah, family is more important to me. But
Your mom probably never missed a baseball game, right?
no, my mom actually was working, so she couldn't
Oh, yeah,
really
she
go to
couldn't.
the baseball
Yeah.
game. So I had my older sisters there. So I really had, I had a lot of support, and
You're riding a lot of
he-
pine too. You were hit on the bench, huh?
no, I was doing all right. But it might not. Everything was. It was. It was a little crazy there working out with the family.
What position did you play?
Baseball. I played outfield. Football. I played.
Cuban, right? Everybody from Cuba is great at.
I'm not
it's
Cuban.
like
I'm Colombian.
Colombian.
This guy thinks I'm Colombian.
I can't
Puerto
figure out what
Rican.
Mark is.
No, he said Puerto Rican.
If you're not corn-fed from the Pacific Northwest,
And I'm
it's all foreign.
And I'm all, but I'm half Colombian and half Mexican. My dad's Colombian, my mom's Mexican,
and Irish.
and I got a little bit of Irish. Yeah, my grandfather was like adopted, and so yeah, there's some
So you played.
2%
You played
Irish.
baseball
Play baseball.
and were decent.
Yeah, I did all right.
And
Baseball.
in a lot of that comes from hard work ethic, right? To be a good athlete.
Well, that's why I look at the model, like the employee model that you like.
Yeah, I only like hiring ex-athletes.
I think that's something that's they're used to.
Adversity, right?
Adversity, failure, and getting up and getting your shit together.
Yeah.
I'm a friend, right?
and get back up and get back to work. It's like that's life. You're gonna fail. Make it a learning experience, and maybe don't do it again.
And I'm a frameworks guy, right? And frameworks come from coaches, right? Do this many reps, this many of this. And if there's that path, are you going to buck it, right? We when you're running a business, there's generally a playbook, right?
Yeah.
That refines itself. And are you hiring people that are willing to engage in the playbook? Or are they going to be like, oh, I can figure out a better way
I
to
can do this all. Yeah, I know everything.
right?
Yeah, you don't want the person that, knows everything, the know-it-all. You want somebody that's open
And time management. That's the thing that I've learned from you with my experience with former college athletes, that time management of being able to be in school full time and practice at the rigor that you guys were expected to practice at.
I would
Right?
I lose sleep thinking about showing up late.
I
and
got
have
good
bad dreams.
grades, but then I was done. And I was doing my thing, and it was not athletic.
But you were a pretty good role player in high school, though.
From a sports perspective,
Yeah.
absolutely. I love team sports.
And a lot
right?
of
And I coach team sports. I
Yeah.
coach my sons, and especially with youth sports, the theme is team, right?
Yeah.
And so I have
you know what team abbreviated is?
what?
Together, everyone achieves more.
There you go. So I always say, have fun, try hard, be a good teammate.
Yep.
Right? Have fun first. Like the sports, you want kids wanting to get back out.
It's
there.
hard. Yeah. Yeah. You have to have fun. Just like in business, you have to have fun.
But I think those exactly are translatable to business.
A lot of-
right?
but
Be
you're-
a good teammate. You kidding me? Like the people that are like so and so keep screwing up, like building these cancers inside offices. Like that's awful.
It is. Yeah. I would go as far to say 90% of the people that I know that are business owners played competitive sport at one time or another and were decent, right? Or even if they weren't, but like going through and they finished varsity, they went through all that.
Mhm.
There's something about it being a young kid but you learn as a young kid too, you're not going to have good coaches. There's a lot of bad coaches out there, just like there's a lot of bad business owners. And yeah,
that I have a boss, my manager in corporate America for a while. You're around a lot of different leadership styles, and she would say you learn it, and of course go into a one-on-one, like so and so doesn't know what they're talking about, blah blah blah, and it's like you learn as much from people that you don't want to emulate as people you do.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. I take all the good stuff, and you can keep all that negative stuff or all that bad stuff.
Well, you were business student of the year in high school, right?
That's true.
Business student of the year.
Yeah, it's super competitive. There were like 3 of us taking accounting, and 1 of us got an A-, and the rest got B+. No, but I think it was the enthusiasm for it, right? I didn't even know that award existed, right? But once you got to that junior, senior year and you were taking electives, my electives were, what is business?
Yeah.
Like, what does that word even mean? Because growing up in a blue collar community, either they were dads who had their own businesses, but they were monetizing their trade, or they were the stores, but I didn't know who the owners were.
Yeah.
And then there were doctors. Like, I don't understand a healthcare business in a hospital. So I didn't even know what business was. And that's where I just kept, even on my LinkedIn, right? Like, learning never ends is my banner, because I was just always trying to figure it out. And then once I started to understand some of the concepts through classroom learning and then experiential learning, always that question, like, could I actually run a business?
Yeah, do this. Can I do this?
And I think my biggest apprehension was around my delegation, my ability to delegate. And Cody and I ran through an experience where going from 20 to 100 million, it was impossible. So I had to pick and choose which things I was letting go.
You can't.
Just like anything else, I got reps in letting go, and then trusting and reading the people that you could trust to give a little more to. But it had to be forced. Like, delegation had to be forced on me. And then once I had those reps, then it was like, I could do this. I could do this. So
nice.
I think one of the interesting concepts too about we're kind of in employee owner conversations is like, what is that difference, right? I personally was an employee for so long, and trying to understand what that owner perception is, and it just felt too big. Felt like there were too many headaches, but yet I would have put in my head I could do it better, right? And I think that's a struggle we always face, is the employee who doesn't have to think about sales, for instance. They don't have to think about what phone system are we going to use. They don't have to think about where the leads are going to come from. How are we going to spend the money? How are we going to pick third-party providers that are going to be, and then they sit down and go, I could do that better.
Oh, yeah.
When everything's served on a platter.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just, that's not reality,
Yeah.
But
let's talk a little bit about, so you went to high school and then you went to college. And you went to high school.
I went to high school. I'm a college dropout. I went to Cal State Fullerton, and I dropped out of there. Basically started working. I got a job working, and that's the thing. I think I was building these skills without even knowing it. It's like it was a box swap. So basically, the cable company was upgrading all their cable boxes, and I got a job. Go switch out cable boxes. You get paid X amount of dollars per box. I was, 18, 19. I was like, hey, let's go. And, going into people's houses, dealing with individuals on a daily like that, it's something different. When you're going into somebody's house rather than, let's say, just a phone conversation,
you grew up in you grew
LA,
up in LA
area.
So,
yep.
And was it like Pasadena?
It was,
what was
all over.
So you were just going all over.
So it was like, okay,
East LA.
Today is like the, it's a pretty big area. So it's like, okay, yeah, the whole system needed to be switched over. So there was tons of guys, so you just get a city, let's say Pasadena. We run through Pasadena, then you got San Gabriel and so on and so forth. And we were doing that at a young age, learning and dealing with a lot of people.
How many guys did you end up running? You ended
Well,
up
that's
running
how I
crew, right?
started. Yeah, that's how I started getting in there. And then basically I became a lead. They made me a lead. And then I came, and then I started learning, just swapping boxes. I got into the installation side and doing that. And then really got into basically building the installation contracting crew. We started with a contract like with 5 installers, and then with that we built it up to about like 50 installers. So that was
And you say we, you and
well, that was like my ex boss. He was
nice.
pretty
So you
pretty
were, but you were, he leaned on you a lot.
oh well, yeah. I've always been like dependable. I've always been reliable. Like we've had to work. Like they work you 6 days a week. In that
You had
system.
a hustler mentality.
So yeah. So I didn't like. You just got to get up and you got to go to work.
Yeah.
You got to show up. That's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Half the battle's showing up.
Yep.
And like, we've had a lot of people that have worked underneath us, and we do right now. And
Yeah.
that is half the battle.
Dude,
Finding
showing
someone that
up
can show up.
And be consistent.
But yeah, show up is really half the battle. But then like showing up, like you can still show up, but not be producing.
Yeah.
So show up ready to produce.
Yep.
And ultimately, because what's feeding you is you're gonna differentiate yourself, which should differentiate your paycheck, right?
Yeah.
I go back to like some of my strongest core skills are from when I was bussing tables through high school, and I worked in it was a fine dining establishment. There were fancy people in there, and it was in a resort town. I was the year-rounder, and I'd be in, and these BMWs are pulling through, and Mercedes, and I'm like, who the heck owns these? So I'm still like watching through the glass as I'm, filling this guy's water or this woman's water. But one of the things I remember about being in there and seeing the real money come after one of these shifts was I was in the tryout room, right? Let's see if this kid can keep up. And I knew the middle room, the ocean room with the best view, had the biggest tables, the biggest tippers, all the wine bottles and all that. I'm like, I'm going to work my ass off and get into that room, because when I work this hard, I'm going to make that much more money. So it was about still seeing that path to the dollar, but it was straight hustle, grind.
Yeah.
We'd wear.
You're meeting those people too, though, and like developing a relationship, right?
They're
Or
not
no?
meeting the help.
No. Oh, man.
I was the help.
I
took you to that restaurant.
yeah, it's a beautiful restaurant, and it is. It's like you see in the movies, yeah. Like it's.
I bring my family there now, and we're in the ocean room, right?
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
pretty cool, and it's on the water. And I'd be sweating. We'd wear blue button-down shirts that are soaked to the bone because
gosh,
you're
yeah.
sweating on Cape Cod. And I'd see these guys out in their boats out on the water right in front of me, and I'm like, someday. And now,
Yeah. How do you get there?
yeah. And today I take my boys out, and we look at that restaurant from the ocean, right?
Yeah, well,
I started
you have
in
2 beach houses that are 500 yards, 400 yards from that.
2 water view homes on the Cape. Yep. One's an investment property. One's for my kids to be able to have that seaside experience, which I love. I mean, for me, growing up on the Cape is different. I live closer to the city now, where my kids are going down there with my wife after school's out, right? But they live in 2 different worlds during the school year. It's all work ethic, right?
Yeah, I think you have to have a base there, and you have to have that work ethic.
But the work ethic comes from having a goal, or like you got to have drive on and like what you want.
I know. I
Right?
think when you talk about that though, I don't. You were more goal oriented
I
than
think
I was.
I had no clue at like 22 or 23. I had no clue. I was just working. I knew like I had to work. I
you
know I
guys
was
were also
developing
around wealth,
skills.
though, right? Like you were.
I don't think I was. I wasn't.
He was around wealth, but even going through LA, like where I grew up, it's farmland. Like it's a bunch of cows. Cow
But
poop,
literally,
cow poop
wealth
everywhere.
literally was on TV, right?
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah, you know, and then my first
would
time
go
going
be
to
the
LA, I
help
was like
around wealth.
blown away. So
I was downstream from wealth. You didn't even see
It's
didn't. Yeah,
it's
there's no wealth
it's
where I was at.
it's a far off land, when
Yeah.
you're a kid.
Yeah,
So
yeah, like where did you grow up? Like
I grew up in LA, Whittier.
Whittier,
Whittier,
yeah.
California.
You go and you drive over to Beverly Hills, and
you're like, wow,
Rodeo Drive,
yeah.
and you're like, is this real life? Like, who are these people? How are they buying this stuff? I remember selling GMC Denali's. It was just the best job I ever had, and it really taught me what the real world was about. Because you're a good athlete. You kind of get stuff on a silver platter, and you get the benefit of the doubt. You have leadership skills, and you have referent power. Essentially, like where you're like a celebrity almost in a small town. So, and then that jumps to college and so on. And that was like my first dose of like the real world, moving to LA, and
nobody cares.
nobody cares. You did sports? I don't care. Like, and I remember guys driving in and wanting to buy a brand new vehicle and just thinking,
Who does that?
how, like where are these guys getting? Because
I have a huge resentment against this time of year and car commercials, because forever they've been putting these bows on these cars and pulling them into people's driveways, and I'm like, who's sitting around buying their wife a car, right? Like who does that?
yeah, I remember sitting there and thinking like, one day I want to be able to buy one of these. Like, and I just think like, how will I ever do that? Like, my parents, the lawn-mowing business did well, but it's $100,000 a year. This is $100,000 vehicle, $150,000 a year. How do you buy $100,000 vehicle? You just can't. Mm-hmm. And then the best thing I ever did was get, work there. My parents were upset with me because I just finished college and I moved to LA, and I'm not working in the career path that I had picked, which was to be an athletic director, because entry-level position as an assistant AD, or I wanted to do philanthropic and fiscal giving. And that's what I did my undergrad as a graduate assistant. It's 35 to 50 grand a year, maybe 60 grand a year. And you can't live in LA for that. Like, that there's no way you could live in LA.
That's one of your kids' private schools. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went door to door and door knocked until I got a job. And sure enough, I got a job at the GMC dealership. And at the time, I felt comfortable with GMC. I knew it was an upper brand. All my family drove Chevys, right? My parents did have a couple GMCs growing up, but you'd have that vehicle for 15 years. It's not something you'd turn over.
Yeah.
And getting the job there was great because, one, it taught me hustle. Well, it taught me backstabbing, right? Like,
these car sales guys are vicious.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it taught me how to be confident and how to speak with people. And I learned like a lot of simple stuff, like never have your hands in your pockets when you're speaking with someone. A lot of psychology in face-to-face sales, which is good.
Nice.
But it taught me the meaning of hustle. Like I would, we'd call them up. So first person to come on the lot, whoever went out there and greeted them would get that up. And I'd sprint ahead of everyone. I was in better shape than these guys, right? Anyhow, but the cool thing was they'd come in and they put down how much money they were making on a credit application. Yeah, they have to run credit if you're going to buy a vehicle. And then on there it would say what they did for work, what their job was on that application, or their profession.
Intake the data.
Yeah, and so I started seeing like these people buying these Denali's, SUVs. They have families. They're well established. It was the best job ever because now I'm seeing what they make up, what career they're in, and then I started taking resumes. I had a stack of resumes and I'd give them out. And I went on a few job interviews from that. And that's how I, got my, leg in the door.
History.
Yeah. He put down how much money he was making
What?
he put down how much money he was making in the monthly. And And I was like, hey, you accidentally put your annual income in the monthly income. He goes, no, that's what I make a month. In fact, it's a little more than that. I was like floored. I was like, okay. Like,
I got a buyer here. I got a buyer.
what's going on? And, he treated me well. Nobody upped him at first because he was wearing flip-flops and swimsuit. He just got off surfing, so he kind of looked like a beach bum. Wanted the most expensive vehicle on the lot. Obviously, you could pay for it in cash. It's a tax write-off for him. And the rest is history. I stayed on his hip and got a job interview from him, and then I worked my way up there. But for me, that was a great experience and a better understanding of like what real money was, and the fact that you could make
it's out there,
50 to 150 grand a month.
Yeah, you just have to hustle and grind, and
well, that's one of the things I think for this show too is I know my reels are filled with, I just did these 3 simple steps and I'm making 10 grand a month. I work 3 hours a day and I make this a month. I think I think it's badass. Like I keep telling my kids, I'm like, will you go do that and start bringing in some loot? But like, technology has enabled individual people to create their own small businesses and grab some money. But if you're going to really develop a business, it is a grind. It is a grind. I've gone through the travel, the hours, the
people,
the fights at home about like 2 people believing that you're serving the family by working that hard. Is it like there's 2 points of view there?
Yeah.
Once you get married, you have kids. Those priorities are my priorities are not the only ones I'm able to make a decision on today. Right? They spread a lot wider. But it is, I think it's all about hustle, right? And Dana White has a reel that keeps popping through where if you are half a savage today, you can absolutely dominate because people are just going out there looking for that quick loot. Yeah. And that's not the way we run businesses, right?
I don't think it's the way anybody run businesses.
I think the people that run successful businesses are a lot further than the way they perceive they are from the end, right? Like I can catastrophize things that are going absolutely perfect into us being out of business tomorrow, which would never, you couldn't give my data set to anyone with a normal brain and have them believe it, but I can believe that I have to work that much harder to make sure, fill that gap. Well, and I think that's what breeds the success because I'm looking for things that I don't need to look for on paper maybe, but I'm like, we have a strive for excellence that I think is why, the businesses that we work on together do so well.
Yeah. And a lot of times on the social media, those aren't real business owners. They don't know the grind, the hustle to get it there. They might have something where they got lucky and hit a 3-month spurt where they made 10 grand a month. It's not long-term. It's not. There's nothing to it. And a lot of times it's fake. And that's what we've found that out by
individuals,
running into these individuals and it's all a front. It's a facade.
There's some really good sales.
Yeah, they're check to check, and it's important to understand that.
But if I think about, this first episode is really about our audience being able to get to know us a little bit, right? Know what drives us, know a little bit about our background, maybe be able to identify with some of those things in the way that they either grew up or the things that they had as aspirational targets. And I am still a 13-year-old kid on a BMX going to wash dishes to get my money. It's just, I go in a nicer car and I go a lot and I know a lot more than I did at 13 years old.
Absolutely.
And that's the point of this podcast is to be able to try and share a lot of those experiences because the fastest way to learn is have someone save you that learning. and tell you what their experience was. Thank you for watching another episode of Add, Edit, and Delete. Small business owners helping small business owners scale correctly. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.